believe is the outcome of that query? Do you think that the documents take the governor's authority away from removing these statutes?
Well, we certainly don't think so, and we've made a lot of arguments to the court that they don't. And I think more importantly, we've also taken the view, and this really dovetails nicely on some of the points that both the previous speakers have made. I mean, we've also taken the view, both as a matter of real property, but also as sort of as a matter of democracy, that even if these documents purported to do that, that they can't do that. That we had a hearing in this case actually just 2 days ago, and I think one of the arguments that we made in the hearing is that it's sort of one of the first principles of democratic government that the government of the past cannot bind the government of the future. That the legislators or the governor of 1890 had no power to make a binding promise forever on behalf of the government of 2020. I think one of our views is that anything a governor does, his or her successor can undo. Any law a legislature passes, a future legislature can unpass or modify. But this is another area where the law is, there's less law on this. It turns out there's not a whole lot of cases where people try to use the law of real property to prevent a state from taking down a monument. In fact, I'm not aware of any other cases that involve precisely that question.
Right, this is a novel issue. So do the legal issues or challenges that vary depending on whether the statutes are on local, state, or federal property, and clarify the jurisdictional differences between them? And then and what happens to these statutes?
Yeah, absolutely. So as Adam said, one of the issues that Norfolk had in their case, the case that he and I worked on together, is there's this threshold question about whether a local government has any rights vis-a-vis its parent state government. And that, I think, is fair to say, is an issue that has not been extensively litigated, and certainly not been extensively litigated recently. Obviously, when the question is whether the state can take down a state-owned monument, there's no questions like that, right? I mean, this is simply a question. There's no question of a higher or superior government authority forbidding the government from doing what they want to. And like I said, I think there was some threshold argument that people made in this case, or when it comes to the Lee Monument, that perhaps federal law would forbid it. And now if federal law forbid it, we'd be in a much more similar situation to the one that Adam's case involved, where you have a government that is generally subordinate in some senses to another government asserting rights against them. But that pretty much dropped by the wayside. I think as the case has come to be defined, it's pretty clear that federal law does not in any way forbid the Commonwealth from taking down the Lee Monument. So I think in some ways, this one becomes a pretty close, or pretty, how do I say this? This is just about the intersection of real property and government authority. There's not these confounding questions of the sort of location of the government within the hierarchy of governments. In terms of what happens to the statues, I think that's a really interesting and really difficult question. I think that's more of a political and social question than it is a legal question, generally speaking. But that doesn't mean it's not a really hard question. It's just it means that I don't know if I have any specialized expertise in helping anyone answer how the question should be answered.